8 of the world's richest criminal organizations. Number 8. If the Median cartel was still around today, it would be at the top of the list. At its heights, this drug dealing group was by far the most powerful and well organized in Colombia and most of the rest of the world. The US thought of it as a semi-terrorist group because it was so well known. Pablo Escobar started the Medellin cartel, for those who don't know. When you hear the name Pablo, you quickly think of stories about how rich he is, and trust me when I say that most of those stories are true. In the city of Medellin, Escobar started a gang when he was in his 20s. The group makes more than $20 billion a year, according to officials' record from Colombia. Most of this money comes from the illegal sales of drugs, as well as trafficking, political violence, thuggery, and the shipping of stolen rare materials organized in Colombia and most of the rest of the world. I won't tell you what will happen next. If you don't think that the Medellin gang was that rich, I'll tell you that Pablo Escobar wasn't the only billionaire who worked for the cartel. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button and the notification bell to stay updated on our daily videos. Number 7. How does a group with no leader bring $4.9 billion Camorra? You could probably not answer that question from where you are sitting. The Camorra gang started in Italy in early 1600s and is still strong today. At first, they were just a bunch of crooks who had nothing to lose. Politicians gave this group of organized criminals the tools they needed to overthrow the monarchy. The main goal of this group was to become wealthy by the 1800s. After being a part of such a big change in history, the Camorra group started to care less about the money and more about the power. Gaining a power isn't a problem, but when you combine it with illegal things like gambling or making fake money, the government will come after you. It did happen the way, but it was too late. The Camorra group had already spread to other countries, and it has a lot of power in Italy now. It has a tight grip on how trash is handled in Naples. Not bad for a group that has been around for 400 years. Number 6. The Sinaloa cartel's drug business is a good one. Even the CIA know this. After talking about all the great things in the Medellin cartel did, we thought it would be a good idea to talk about the Sinaloa cartel, which took its place as the biggest gang in the world. The government states that the criminal group make at least $3 billion a year, but I don't believe that number for a few reasons. First, the Sinaloa gang is one of the biggest in the world and it owns 60% of the money made from drugs. So, the first question is, what's the value of the drug market? Well, depending on who you ask, it would be anywhere from $6.5 billion to $500 billion. Because the range is so big, no one knows exactly how much money is being made. But everyone knows that Sinaloa gang owns and runs more than half of it. The gang was started by El Chapo Guzman. His life is interesting enough to be the subject of a story, and if you like to escape stories, you should read it. You probably already know that I've made a few stories about him. Even though he is on jail and on the run, he has been able to run a gang. Even if you don't like what he's done, you have to admit that he is a good boss. Number 5. Organized crime has been going on Italy for a long time. This isn't just Hollywood thing. You may not have heard of Dranidol, but they are an important part of the Italian mafia's global network. How much do they make on paper? $4.5 billion, but I tell you why I think that's probably too low. The Italian gang that began in 1800s in Calabria, their main product was cocaine, and they've become one of the biggest cocaine sellers in Europe over the years. This group stands out because it has maintained good relationships with other crime groups by choosing to talk things instead of using violence. This has turned them from enemies into friends, making it hard for the police to solve their cases. In the last few years, the crime group that has been around for 200 years has started laundering money by putting money into legal companies. You could call them if you have an idea for a new business and don't care where their money comes from. Number 4. You may not have heard of the Yamaguchi Gumi, but you have already heard of Yakuza. They are like the Italian mafia, and Yamaguchi Gumi is a Yakuza member, just like Komoda is an Italian mafia member. Let's get going. If you know anything about Yakuza in Japan, you know that they are one of the most upright criminal groups in the world. They are so strict that if you break one of their rules or law, you have to do something called the utsumi, which basically means you have to cut a little finger to show how sorry you are. The Yamaguchi Gumi is the largest Yakuza group. It was started by Hakuri Yamaguchi in 1916. At least 20,400 people are regular members, and another 18,600 people are just related to the group. Most of their money comes from things like blackmail, gambling, selling guns to the sex industry, selling drugs, and manipulating the stock market. People say that gang makes at least $6.6 billion a year. I think though that's definitely a lot more than that. Number 3. Sunsetskaya Bratva, you shouldn't be shocked that Russian has a mob. The Sunsetskaya Bratva is the biggest and most powerful Russian gang, and it's thought that it makes about $8.5 billion a year. This part of the Russian mob does almost everything from selling drugs to killing people for money. You wouldn't wrong to say that they are involved in everything, unlike the OXA, which is well organized and has a clear chain of command. This group stands out because of something. There are 1,000 people, and they are split into 10 groups that almost work on their own. Each brigade works more or less on its own, but when they need to work together, they pool their resources and do so. Their money is handled by a group of 12 people who get together often, under the guise of a party, in different parts of the world. And you thought that books were weirder than life. How many people put India on the list of groups that are part of organized crime? Most likely none, I think. Maybe not enough research has been done, or maybe most people just don't look. It works both ways. Number 2. Can you hear the Godfather's theme song in the background? La Cosa Nostra is one of the most well-known and respected criminal organizations. The group, which is often called the mafia, started in Sicily, Italy in 1800s. The story goes that it started as a jail gang with some of the rules and ideas that the mafia still has today. The mafia was able to move from bars and small towns to places with more power because the government was unstable at that time. They helped kill people and did other things to hurt the government by working the rival groups in the government. Then Mussolini, a crazy leader, took over. Even the mafia bosses couldn't handle how violent he was, so they ran to the US and Canada to keep running their businesses. Some examples are sexting, gaming, prostitutes, and laundering money. Cosa Nostra is the number 2 Gulf cartel and one of the Mexico's oldest criminal groups. It has at least 25,000 members and 250,000 fans all over the world. As the number 2 Gulf cartel, they make about $50 billion together. And number 1, this list should include the Gulf Cartel, which has a strong base in Mexico. Drugs are sent all over the US and even to Europe by this group. Aside from drugs, they are most well known for kidnappings and being very dangerous. They also seem to be involved in just about every illegal things they can get their hands on. The agencies that fight drugs have hurt Sinaloa the most out of all gangs, but they have still been able to stay in business. They are still worth about $9.9 billion, which makes them one of the biggest group of crooks who mostly work in Mexico, from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, but they are now also in South Africa, the US, Britain, South America, and Russia. Their major business is slave labor, and they move at least 100,000 people around the world every year. This is madness. They also deal drugs, run rackets, and do any other kind of crime that fits their taste. It has been hard to get rid of them because they are mostly spread out. A low-level triad member could easily be mistaken for a boss. They gave them a lot of freedom, and no one really knows how their money moves. We only know that it went somewhere. Some people have said $13 billion, while others have said much more. No one will ever know for such because the group is so loose and hidden. That's it for today. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up below, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We post videos every week, so stay notified. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the following video.